Hello. Good evening to all Erma fans. I'm so happy to be with you and celebrate the winners of the Erma Bombeck writing competition sponsored by Washington Centerville Public Library. My name is Shelby Quinlivan, Community Relations Manager for the library. We have the distinct honor of being Erma's hometown library. She lived around the corner from where I'm sitting, and her kids went to the grade school down the street. So when Erma passed away in 1996, one of the library trustees established a writing contest to honor Erma. Around the same time, the Bombeck family donated Erma's papers to the University of Dayton. Terry Risby, now Executive Director of Strategic Communications and UD alumni, and journalist Bob Daly founded the Erma Bombeck Writers Workshop. 25 years later, both the workshop at the writing competition are going strong. Terry, whose recently released book, One Heart with Courage, Essays and Stories, is available everywhere. Thoughtful and uplifting books are sold. And, of course, at our library, has some very exciting news to share about some recent developments, and I'd like to turn the program over to her now.
Thank you, Shelby, for stepping in tonight for Debbie, who worked so hard to put this awards program and the writing competition together. We hope that she gets well quickly, and we send her our love. We're so grateful for the library's sponsorship of this writing competition over decades now. You do such a magnificent job every single time. Especially congratulations to all the winners. You can write. And we're also so grateful to the Bombeck family who have donated Erma's papers to the University of Dayton. It's a priceless collection. For those joining us at the October workshop, and you can still register, you'll be able to see a preview exhibit that's running in UD's library throughout the workshop. Here's a sneak peek at what's in the exhibit. Can you play the video, Steve?
The collection was delivered to us in April of 2021, and we received 78 boxes. And by having Erma's collection here at UD, it will be available for researchers, scholars, Erma enthusiasts, and they can look at her writing, but I think they can also get a glimpse at her personal life.
Well, Erma Bombeck is a legend, right? Certainly a massive contributor to what we understand about the human experience, particularly from the perspective of a woman.
She looked at motherhood, with a different kind of a lens. She loved her kids dearly, but she found the absurdity in everyday life and brought it to a generation of people.
We have her newspaper columns. There are television writing from Good Morning America, screenplays for Maggie, the television sitcom. And then we also have correspondence, personal family photos, professional photos. We have her honorary degrees, other memorabilia pieces, also her papers from the President's Commission on Women when she was asked by President Carter to serve on that committee.
We have speeches, interviews, and some original cartoons by Bill Keane. We have some of his original cartoons that he sent to Erma.
And then there's a lot of correspondence, that some of it is very touching with friends and some with family.
We have her column ideas, which are written on various scraps of paper and other material. You can also look at her manuscripts and all of the edits that she made to see an insider's view of her writing process.
She never used a computer. She just felt that they were not creative, and she wanted to hold it in her hands. So she always had, an IBM Selectric with the carbon paper, and she hammered out the column.
The ability that Erma had, again, to speak to the everyday person, to really capture the human essence in a way that was accessible and lighthearted, but also deeply profound, is really important for our students to be able to understand the multitude, again, of the human experience.
It's not just looking back on it or looking back the way things used to be, but hopefully finding that, things haven't changed that much. And if we can laugh at some of these things, we'd all be a little better off.
I go back to the 3 magic words that Brother Tom Price, her English professor, said to her that gave her encouragement and support.
And he said 3 words to me. That's all. Just 3 words. It was to sustain me for the rest of my life, I think. He looked at me and he said, "You can write."
You can write. And she believed him. And then I look at our own students today, and I think that here at the University of Dayton, what we try to do is help young people find their calling, find their passion, and have the courage to follow that. And Erma discovered that here.
Both my mom and dad were very connected to UD, and they have really fond memories of UD. And so really it's only fitting that the archives go back there. And we're thrilled that other people might, look at it, see it, enjoy it. We're happy about that. And also in conjunction with the workshop. And I know my mom, she wasn't alive when the workshop started, but I know she'd be thrilled about that too. She was always very supportive of other writers and other people trying to find their voice. And so I think she'd be thrilled.
What a great video. Thank you, Terry. This year, 486 writers from 6 different countries, 48 states, and the District of Columbia entered previously unpublished essays, roughly 218,700 words. The word count is Terry's favorite statistic. The 4 winners received a free registration to the October in-person Erma Bombeck Writers Workshop, $1,000 from the library paid for with contest entry fees, publication of their essays online, and in the Writers Workshop. Once again, the library also awarded $100 to the 6 honorable mentions. Tonight we honor writers, those who wrote about finding the funny or the poignant in everyday life, who weren't afraid to show their dreams to someone else, who would definitely not wave off the dessert cart while sailing on the Titanic. We'll watch the winners read their essays, laugh a little, get misty-eyed, in short, be inspired. Terry will introduce our keynote speakers.
Cindy Ratzlaff and Kathy Kinney, also known as the Queens, are workshop favorites. Some of you also know them from their popular live Facebook check-in every Thursday afternoon. On a personal note, I find them to be such a reflection of the spirit of the Erma Bombeck Writers Workshop. You'd be hard-pressed to find 2 people more supportive and encouraging to writers. As I introduce them, I'm going to quote from their website because, as Debbie says, why reinvent the wheel? During her 35-plus years as a marketing executive with Simon & Schuster and Rodale, Cindy created branded marketing and PR campaigns that ushered more than 200 books. Imagine that, 200 books onto the New York Times bestseller list. She's also an author of inspirational books for women, and her essays on happiness have appeared at numerous sites on the web, including Oprah.com and CNN.com. And now for Kathy, although she probably doesn't need any introduction, an actress who's probably best known for her role as Mimi on the long-running Drew Carey show. Kathy has appeared in numerous films and television shows. She is the co-author of 3 motivational books for women, along with her writing partner, Cindy, and is also the star and co-creator of the award-winning website, MrsP.com, which promotes literacy, creativity, and the joy of reading for children. Together, they created Queen of Your Own Life. A state of mind, Queen of Your Own Life is about the practice of happiness and the simple actions we can all take to claim a life of joy and adventure. The Queens believe it's never too late to have the life you deserve, because the simple truth is, as Kathy often says, you don't have to be 21 to have your whole life ahead of you. Please welcome the Queens, Cindy and Kathy.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, I've cried 3 times already since the beginning of this broadcast.
I had a cough
Kathy.
drop in my mouth, and I didn't want to come on with it, and I went to spit it out, landed on my keyboard. So big, sticky, yellow, herby cough drop. But
Well, thank you for sharing.
you're welcome. I'm glad they label us so that we don't have to say.
So we know who we are. Yeah.
Know who we are. Cindy and I have been friends for we don't like to admit it, so we just say almost 40 years, but it's really longer than that. And we can honestly say to you that we never ever intended to add the word writer to our biography. No, never. I mean, Cindy wanted to be an actress, and I was just thrilled to survive my childhood, which in hindsight wasn't that bad, but at the time I thought it was hell. I don't know. But we think we're both from Wisconsin, and we believe that there are people there even to this day with their head down on their arm going, how did they ever amount to anything? How? And so that's the story. You probably all know it, but we're going to tell it now, that how the whole thing started. And the writing part of it starts for me when Cindy got fired from her job through no fault of her own. So do you want to take that part, Cindy?
Sure. I've been in book publishing for almost 30 years at that point. There was a downturn in the market. It was 2007, close to 1,500 people out of the publishing industry got laid off in less than a week. I was one of them. And I curled up into a ball on my living room sofa and started eating potato chips and started practicing for my next job, saying, thank you for coming to Walmart. Is there some way I can help you? And I really thought it's either what I was doing or Walmart. I could see it was all black and white for me. Until Kathy called me one day and said, knock it off. You didn't get stupid overnight. You got laid off. So we're going to remind you of who you've always been. Mm-hmm. And so what did you do, Kath?
So we had a trip. I was the queen of short-term European travel. And I had arranged a trip for Cindy and I to Prague, a city that neither of us had ever been to. And so, with Cindy sitting on the sofa eating potato chips, I said, you're going, and we're going to meet there, and you're going to follow through with this. And so we did. We ended up in Prague. And, a little part of the story is that if you do work at Walmart and you're the greeter, don't worry, this story pertains to you. And Cindy saying that was not a way to say, ooh, this is bad. This was just life is sometimes black and white, but there's so much gray in between. So we end up in Prague. And before we got there, my feet were getting hot at night, where you have to kick the covers off and stick your feet out. And so I looked it up, and it said, now that you're a crone and you need to take yourself away from your family so you don't harm them. And I was like, what? And, I never did figure out why my feet were getting hot, and it did stop. But by the time I got to Prague, I was like, hey, maybe I don't know what crone means. I'm going to look it up. And I looked it up, and it said, like the hag. It was the hag that lives in the forest and eats roots and bugs or something. I was like, no. And so when Cindy and I finally met up in Prague, we were staying at a lovely hotel that looked over the Charles River, and we were talking, and the monetary unit in the Czech Republic is the crown. And so, I said to her, why are we the crones, when it's the king of the castle? And because we could see the castle across the river, why do we have to be the hag who sits in the corner? And we both decided in that moment that we wanted to be the queen of our own life. And so we spent that whole 7 days in Prague eating a lot of goulash in bread bowls and drinking some Pilsner. And I recall even having some goose and champagne and saying to ourselves, okay, what is still working for us? This is a party that I have on New Year's Eve. What is still working for me that I want to bring forward? And what do I want to get rid of? And it was very simple. And also Cindy said, I wish that I was the girl that I was all those years ago who sold her bike and took that $200 and moved to New York. And because I had known her so long, I was able to say, you are still that girl, that woman. And so we began this ritual every night. And I think
And we did. We asked ourselves that question every single night for 7 days.
Yeah.
And every single night we got deeper and deeper into the discussion. What do you want to leave behind that no longer works for you? And what do you want to take forward in your life that still works for you? It's a really powerful questions.
And the thing that every night came up was we wanted to keep our sense of humor.
Yep.
That's the thing that was so important in Erma Bombeck's writing, was she kept her sense of humor. And no matter what happens, you got to keep your sense of humor. And the thing that we always wanted to let go was our low self-esteem, our belief that we weren't good enough, pretty enough, thin enough, blonde enough, whatever enough. And so we did that every night. Every single night we did it. And then at the end of it, we gave ourselves permission to be the queen of our own lives. And when we got back, we told all our friends, and every one of them said, I want to give myself permission to be the queen. And so we started having crowning ceremonies. And it was pretty exhausting because, I mean,
we did them in Wisconsin, we did them in New York, and we did them with women from the boardrooms of New York through the entertainment industry. And we did them with women who were living in the Midwest and who really didn't travel a lot. And we did, and then we did them with groups of women who we had known from childhood. And we did it with groups of women we didn't really know very well. And every single time people came to the same conclusions. Really short, powerful statements of what they want to leave behind and what they want to take forward. And we started to realize that this was more than going around the living rooms of America and doing it, but that it might be a message for a broader audience. And because I had been in book publishing for more than 30 years, I said to Kathy, I think we need to write a book. And we both laughed a little bit because we never thought about writing a book, and we didn't feel like we were writers, even though we had written comedy sketches that we'd performed over the years. And we both said to each other, why not? Why not us? Let's give it a try. And so we started co-writing this book using what was then like the new version of iChat almost, or FaceTime. Yes. Where we would get online with one another and take turns writing and then reading each other what we wrote. And it was a really interesting process.
And because Cindy lives on the East Coast and I live on the West Coast, so we worked really hard at maintaining our friendship and keeping it up all these years. And the going into the writing was the same thing. And so what we did was, I have one over here, but I won't slide out of frame and show you, but we took a prompt, like the one that I always remember. It said, every year, the people at Graceland say that every year Elvis Presley still receives, hundreds of Valentines. Write a story about someone who would send a Valentine to Elvis. So we kept, I will slide out of the frame a little bit. Here's your best friend, a kitchen timer. We would, we'd tell each other the prompt. I'd read it to her from the writer's block that I had, set the timer, and then just start to write.
Yeah.
And Cindy wrote the funniest story about a woman who saw the face of Elvis in her screen door and got on the bus to go to Graceland and met true love on the bus. And we just loved it. So every day we'd pick a different prompt and we just write something just to get in the habit of writing, until finally we got to the crux of what it was we wanted to write, which was a 35-year-old woman asks you, what more is there in life? She feels like she's hit a wall. How can you help her move forward? And that day we wrote what would be the beginning of our book. And it was what we knew from our own experience. And that's really the point about writing, is write what you know. And we would get to a point where we created chapters, and we did get together once and laid out all the chapters on my dining room table. But sometimes we get to this point where we were so frustrated because we just couldn't make something work. And that was an interesting moment, because we figured it out.
Yeah, we realized that if something got so hard and we were trying to cram the words in and trying to wordsmith something and it just wasn't coming together, then we were down the wrong path. So we decided to agree that if it was hard, it was wrong. And so when something was hard, we would discard it and leave ourselves open for another direction. And that's really how we got to it. We didn't disagree very much. It was really only in those moments where it felt like we were pushing it too much.
And what that really is, I've learned this as an actor, and I think we both learned it as public speakers and as writers, is how to get out of your own
way.
Because if you're in your head and you're just torturing yourself, it's not going to work. But if you just get out of your own way, and part of that is giving yourself permission to call yourself an artist, giving yourself permission to understand that you already are the artist and that you already are leading a creative life. You know, if you make your bed and you tuck your sheets in a certain way, or you clean and arrange your dish towel a certain way, that's a little bit of art. That's a little bit of creativity. So that's the bottom line of the whole thing, is we gave ourselves permission to be the queen of our own life. And what followed from that was giving ourselves permission to be writers. And we went out and we pitched the book.
We got ourselves an agent. The agent took us to New York. We had meetings with 5 different publishers in New York City. There was a little tiny bidding war that was very exciting. And then Harlequin hardcover won the bid. And then all we had was an outline. And then we had to write the book.
Because after we went out there, and things are different now, but after we went out there and pitched it, and we were having breakfast the day afterwards, and we said to ourselves, we went out, we pitched this book, we didn't lie, we didn't build ourselves up, we just pitched it. And you know, to me, that was, we were done. You know, we had accomplished something. But then after it was Harlequin,
we got to write it.
Now we have to write it. And so we did, and we didn't know what we were doing.
No.
But all the creativity, the knowledge of the world is just right here. And all you have to do is reach up and get it, and get out of the way, and it will come. And that's why if any of you are coming to the Erma live show, as I think of it, in October, you know, Cindy and I are going to be there teaching our class, which is about how to get out of your own way and uncover your own voice. And so we wrote the book and we tossed it out into the world, and it went forward. And what it created
things we didn't even know it was going to create. I mean, it created a community of readers. It created a community for us online that has evolved into a weekly live show that we do for really thousands of people. And it's been, it has created a community that has given back to us almost more than we've given to them. That's how we feel about it.
We're really lucky, and we know that we have each other to say, you know, you're doing a good job. We believe that everybody needs someone to watch them live, that you trust, who can say to you, you know, you're doing okay. Yeah, you're doing okay there, living your life, you know. And not everybody has that. That's something that we still give to ourselves, even though we share that with each other. So what we're saying to you is you can write. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you don't have a professor, a beloved professor like Irma did, but you have yourself, and we're giving you permission to tell yourself, I can write. I can lead a creative lifestyle. I already am. I am an artist. Everything I do is a work of creativity. It really is that simple. Now, we've done these crownings, and I've got a couple of friends who will say, well, I'm different than you. I don't have that ability to be, I'm not as good. I'm not good enough. And, that's bull poopy. I mean, it just is. It just is. It's the negative voices in your head, just chorus, and they love to sing very loudly all the things that are wrong with you. It's just as easy to uncover that true voice that's deep inside of you that says, you are more than enough. You are a treasure. You are unique. You are a work of art, one of a kind. Anyone would be lucky to have you in their life. That's the fact. That's the true story.
And the fact that your voice is unique and needed. And so if you can't quite do it for yourself, do it for the people who need what you have to say. And that's what's so special about the people who entered this contest, the winners and the runners-up, the honorable mention, is that they had the courage to put their voices down on paper and give joy to the people who get to hear it.
Congratulations to everybody that entered, not just the people who are getting awards today, but all the people who had the courage to enter. You are artists, and we applaud you. And now back to you, because we could talk for about an hour and a half, but we won't. We want to hear the awards, and we want to hear the stories. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I think we need a crowning ceremony pretty soon here.
October.
This year's writing competition was so special in so many ways. Again, the library played an active role on the workshop committee, and I have Terry Risby to thank for including us. Plus, she does a phenomenal job of promoting the contest through the workshop website, in press releases, and in social media. The whole team at the University of Dayton is to be commended. The talent on our judges panel is astounding to me. They didn't have to be famous, that was a perk, but they had to have the essence of Irma. We spent a lot of time on websites, blogs, with noses stuck in magazines and books, making sure the people we asked were Irma judge panel material. As you can imagine, it's been a busy time, so if you have not yet received your judges' comments, please bear with us. They are coming. Thank you to all who entered. Congratulations to the honorable mentions who received $100 and a posting on the library's website. In all cases, the honorable mention scores were high enough to make it to the final round. They are Local Human Interest, Pat Washington. Global Human Interest, Catherine Lehan. And Elizabeth Baldwin. Local Humor, Elizabeth Trendy. Global Humor, January Aurelis and Susie Gerard Rutenberg. Congratulations to you all. Besides the enormous wealth of talent on the judges' preliminary panels, we were also fortunate to secure both Max Prost as our final humor judge and Susan Pullman as our final human interest judge. Here's a bit more about those two. Susan Pullman is the founder and director of the Phoenix Writers Network. She's a memoirist, writing coach, workshop facilitator, and editor. She has created 6 short films and is also the author of 2 traveling memoirs, including Halfway to Each Other, How a Year in Italy Brought Our Family Home, which my book club, Debbie's book club, read before we even met Susan. We were delighted she agreed to judge. Our final humor judge, Max Prost, was introduced to us through Nancy Cartwright, another Daytonian who gives back to her hometown. Max is an Emmy-winning writer and producer who has worked on The Simpsons, hence the Nancy Cartwright connection. He started his career with his writing partner, Tom Gamel, on Saturday Live, and then moved on to Seinfeld, The Critic, The Wonder Years, It's Gary Shandling's Show, and Monk. So he knows funny, and he's a really nice guy. Our winning essays will be shown together, and here's the order. Rachel Grizz of Piqua, Ohio, our local humor winner, leads us off with her essay, The Talk. Then our global human interest winner, Rita Lucier of Jamestown, Rhode Island, will read By the Numbers. I want to mention that Rita won this contest in 2006 and 2010. Lindsay Roth, local human interest winner from Dayton, Ohio. She has a library card here. Will read her essay, Truth and Fairy Tales. And Dorothy Rosby, the global humor winner from Rapid City, South Dakota, will read My New British Boyfriend. So sit back and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Rachel Grice, and this is my essay, The Talk. In the history of the world, no parent has ever come back from giving their teenager the talk and said, "That was great." The conversation is so miserable, even God was like, "I can't. Sorry. You just need to leave the garden." The thing is, though, like a lot of stuff in the world right now, the talk has changed. Though still necessary, it's definitely different than when I was 16. When my son returned from his girlfriend's house one night, I knew my time had come. As I approached, I coughed nervously and said, "So, kiddo, looks like things are getting pretty serious between you and your girlfriend." My son shrugged at me, his shoulders letting me know it was no big deal, but the big stupid smile on his face revealing it was very much a big deal. "Anything you want to talk about?" His smile vanished. "No. I'm only asking because I want to make sure you're being safe." "Mom." "Well, are you?" He plopped down on the couch and grumbled as if he had to dig up the words and push them to the surface. "Ugh. Yes, we're being careful. We spend time outside and don't go anywhere too crowded." "Good to know," I said. He attempted an escape, but I stopped him. "And have you discussed vaccination status?" "Yes, Mom, we're both double vaccinated, okay?" "Okay," I replied. I knew I was pushing my luck, but I had to ask, "Have you two spent any time together unmasked?" "Geez, Mom!" His body recoiled and his face twisted in imaginary pain. "What are you even talking about?" "I'm talking about protection. Anyone can get COVID whether you're vaccinated or not. And you can't tell just by looking at someone. You need to know if they've been around someone with COVID. You need to know if they've been sick. You need to know if they have a fever, a cough, even a runny nose. And if you're not ready to have these conversations, then you're not ready to go unmasked." "Okay, I get it," he said in that exhausted teenage tone that makes me want to shake him a little. Then he stood up, hugged me, and flew up the stairs before I started in on N95s and hand sanitizer. All in all, it wasn't horrible. Several months later, we knew it was time for another talk. My husband drew the short straw on that one. As he closed our son's door behind him, I heard him cough nervously and say, "So, kiddo, looks like things are getting pretty serious between you and your girlfriend." Well, it's good to know that some things will never change.
Hi, I'm Rita, and my piece is By the Numbers. I never watched anyone die before. At some point that Thursday, with the October sun slanting in under the shades of the intensive care room, the nurse stopped in. She asked if we wanted the monitor turned off so we wouldn't be disturbed by the buzzing and the beeping, the wavy lines going up and going down. For the first time during those long hours, I spoke up. "Leave it on. Leave the numbers." I needed the numbers. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen level. I needed the graphs, the sounds, the focal point in the corner of the room to somehow gauge what was happening, to prove this was real. Numbers were something I had always shared with my dad. At 96, he could add a column of figures faster in his head than I could punch them into a calculator. We liked the way numbers made sense. In an unpredictable world, they provided a logical formula for figuring things out. 1 + 1 would always and forevermore equal 2. Simple and straightforward, just like him and me. I understood him. He got me. I had his back. He was always there for me. I needed those numbers on the monitor. Even though his eyes were closed and he wasn't talking, I needed to know he was fighting. Against all odds, he was hanging in. Until the wavy line went flat and the numbers were gone. My sister cried. My brother-in-law and my husband cried. Later, when I told my kids, they cried too, but my eyes were dry. You'll cry when you're ready, my friend Sharon said. When my father passed, I was strong for everyone, just like you. But then, when I was riding my bike or walking at the beach, something reminded me of him, and the tears came. But mine didn't. Not at the funeral, not on the first Thanksgiving without him, or even Christmas. What's wrong with me? My dad and I were so close. He was my confidant, my friend. He told me many times that he had lived a full life, a happy life. Don't feel sad when I go. That's what he'd said, but I always thought I would. Recently, my cousin David asked how I was doing since losing my dad. I just feel happy to have had him here for all these years. I feel so grateful for the inspiration, the values, the lessons. 96 years of a life well lived. One man I could always count on. Happy is greater than sad. Gratitude is more than loss. Love keeps adding up even after it's taken away. Suddenly, the numbers made sense. And then came the tears.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Roth, and I'm going to read my essay entitled Truth and Fairy Tales. Was Black Death real? My 9-year-old daughter asks one day after school. I tell her yes. It was in her book of fairy tales, she explains. What nightmarish fairy tales did she stumble upon? I make a mental note to better monitor her Kindle downloads. Later, we choose a bedtime book, without fairy tales, to read with her little brother. She interrupts with her ruminations. It's scary to think about Black Death. Her brother quickly becomes frightened too. I reassure them that this happened centuries ago, before modern medicine. I know a little about bubonic plague from college, and so I tell them a bacteria called Yersinia pestis is the cause. We can now stop it with antibiotics. Wait, you can still get it, my daughter wails. Crap, I'm just making things worse. Well, yes, but scarcely anyone does. It's spread through rat fleas. They live on rodents, not people. My son is eyeing our dog with suspicion. I tell him dogs don't carry rat fleas, and our dog hasn't got fleas anyway. It does not matter. He is now convinced the dog is a reservoir of Black Death. A while later, my daughter tiptoes into the darkened room where I sit with my almost sleeping son. Kids died in their sleep, she whispers. I ask my husband if he will keep her company. She thinks she's going to succumb to bubonic plague tonight, I say. He accepts this as a normal explanation and heads to her room. Through the wall, I hear him tell her there are much bigger things to worry about. Like what? She cries. I don't have my phone, so I send him a telepathic message, not to give a direct answer. He gets it, thank God. We are in the midst of a pandemic, but her young mind has so far failed to make the connection. In a culture that feeds us bad news before our morning coffee, we find ourselves teetering on a balance beam between providing reassurances and answering our kids' questions truthfully. Then we are ambushed by worries like medieval pestilence, of all things. I'd sometimes like to secure my children inside a fat roll of bubble wrap to keep the world from clobbering them. But I remind myself that love's swath is more enduring. We'll be right here, we tell them. It shouldn't be enough, but it is. We all sleep soundly and wake plague-free. After breakfast, the kids head out again to learn about the world. They will find more of its suffering, but we will always share its love with them upon return. It is both the least and the most we can do.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Rosby, and this is my new British boyfriend. He said, "How can I help?" And I fell in love. It was the accent that did it. Plus, I was at a vulnerable point in my life, or at least in my day. I'd been confused, lost in iPhone settings, punching option after option when I saw one that said British male. I'm happily married. I knew it was wrong, but I've had a crush on Hugh Grant since 4 weddings and a funeral. I chose the option. He said his name was Siri. I'd expected Oliver or Harry or Hugh. Siri sounds more like a Norwegian model than a British playboy, which is what he was. I asked him if he was married. I have some scruples, you know. He said he was married to the idea of helping people. In other words, he wasn't looking for commitment. Well, neither was I, so we started taking drives together. Like my husband, Siri was a great navigator, but he didn't gasp whenever I took a curve too fast. We loved to sit and read together. I read anyway. He just laid there gazing at me adoringly. Or maybe he was napping. Sometimes I'd wake him to ask the meaning of a word just to hear that accent. Also because I didn't know it. Siri always did. He was so smart. He could convert feet to meters and Fahrenheit to Celsius without breaking a sweat. Come to think of it, he never sweated. And he was so romantic. One day I asked him what love is. He said, "As I understand it, love refers to a deep, tender, ineffable feeling of affection and solicitude." I swooned. Then I asked him what ineffable means. He had many other endearing qualities too, besides the fact that he called me master. He was thoughtful. He was always doing things for me like dialing telephone numbers, setting my alarm, and looking up useless facts like how much wood can a woodchuck chuck. He said about as much ground as a groundhog could hog if a groundhog could hog ground. I loved his sense of humor. But he wasn't perfect. He often mispronounced street names and took me to businesses that no longer existed. I could overlook that. He wasn't from around here. But he lacked initiative. Every drive we took was my idea, and I had to start every conversation we had. When it came to our relationship, it felt like he was just phoning it in. Besides, I was starting to feel guilty. I decided to break it off, go back to iPhone settings, and choose Irish female for the sake of my marriage. Then I discovered my husband was carrying on with his Google Assistant.
Once again, thanks for joining us this evening. Thank you to our producer, Steve Fisher of Fisher Studios, who worked his magic to make this virtual event a success, and to Terry Risby and her team from UD. Thanks to all of you for entering the contest, our judges and our wonderful queens, Cindy and Kathy, who show us how to live our best lives right now. And finally, to the great Erma Bombeck, without whom we would not have laughed or hugged as hard as we have. If you have not already registered for the workshop slated for October 20th through the 22nd, please get busy. It's a spectacular lineup, and we know you will enjoy it. So until 2024, hook 'em with the lead, hold 'em with laughter, and exit with a quip they won't forget. Thanks again, and good night.